"You're not invited to Christmas," my sister smirked. "Fine, but don't expect a penny for my $50,000 bonus," I replied. The day I signed away my future is burned into my memory like a scar. Rain pelted the windows of the lawyer's office, matching the tears that hadn't stopped flowing since we'd buried Mom and Dad 3 days earlier. I was 19, sophomore year of college, put on hold, my world imploding in slow motion. "Just sign here, Ellie," Lydia said, her voice gentle but firm as she slid the paper across the polished mahogany desk. My older sister by 8 years. Always the responsible one. Always in control. It's what Mom and Dad would want. You know how they worried about you. The lawyer, Mr. Harrington, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should discuss the terms once more." "We've been over it twice," Lydia cut in, not unkindly, but with the efficiency that had earned her junior partner status at her firm by 30. "Ellie understands. Don't you, Elle?" Did I understand? The document swam before my eyes. Words like joint access and fiduciary responsibility blurred together. What I understood was that I was alone in the world, except for Lydia. What I understood was that I couldn't breathe whenever I thought about coming home to an empty house for Thanksgiving, or never hearing Dad's off-key humming in the morning, or Mom never seeing me graduate. "It's just until you're older and more stable," Lydia added, her manicured hand squeezing mine. "I'm protecting you. That's what big sisters do." Mr. Harrington's face held an expression I couldn't quite read. Concern? Resignation? "Ms. Eleanor, while this arrangement is unusual, it's not without precedent. Just be aware that you're granting your sister access to manage the trust fund your parents established for you. The principal amount is—" "I know how much it is," I whispered, though I couldn't actually focus on the numbers. "Nearly $1 million. My parents' life insurance, the college fund they'd been building since my birth, and a portion of their retirement savings they'd designated for me. Mom and Dad had always been careful with money, planning for every contingency. Except they hadn't planned on dying in a head-on collision with a drunk driver while driving home from their anniversary dinner. "I just can't think about money right now," I said, voice breaking. Lydia nodded sympathetically. "That's why I'm doing this for you. You focus on healing, on school, when you're ready to go back. I'll make sure everything's taken care of." My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. Part of me wanted to read every line, to ask questions, to understand exactly what I was signing. But a larger part, the part shattered by grief and fear, just wanted someone else to handle the overwhelming details of life after death. I signed. Something shifted in the room. Maybe it was just my imagination, but Lydia seemed to stand straighter, tucked the papers into her briefcase a little too quickly. "Well, that's settled then," she said briskly. "Mr. Harrington, thank you for your time. Send any further correspondence to my office." On the drive home to Lydia's house, where I'd been staying since the funeral, she talked about practical matters. "You should finish the semester. Your professors have been understanding about extensions, right? And when summer comes, we'll figure out if you want to stay on campus or maybe get an apartment nearby." I nodded, watching raindrops race each other down the car window, wondering which would reach the bottom first. It seemed as good a way as any to make decisions now. "And don't worry about tuition or expenses," she continued. "That's exactly what the trust is for. Mom and Dad would want you to focus on your education." "When can when do I get control of it?" I asked, the first sensible question I'd thought to ask all day. Lydia kept her eyes on the road. "When you're ready. The agreement says 25, but honestly, money management isn't something they teach you in English lit classes." I bristled slightly at that. I was studying journalism, not literature, and I wasn't completely financially illiterate. But I let it go. Lydia had already taken time off work to handle the funeral arrangements, deal with our parents' house, and now my financial situation. I was grateful. Years passed. I graduated with my journalism degree, but couldn't land anything beyond freelance work that barely covered ramen and rent. I moved into a tiny studio apartment because Lydia had started dating Richard, a cardiothoracic surgeon with expensive tastes. They needed their space. I understood. Occasionally, I'd ask about the trust. "How's the money doing?" I'd venture during our monthly dinners. "It's invested." It's safe, Lydia would reply, waving away the question with her fork. The market's been volatile. You're lucky I'm watching it. Just focus on building your career. By 23, I was working for a local newspaper, making barely above minimum wage. When my car broke down, I asked Lydia if I could use some trust money for repairs. That's not what the trust is for, Ellie, she said, sounding disappointed. It's for your future, not everyday expenses. That's why I'm managing it, to protect you from yourself. She did loan me her old car when she upgraded to a new Mercedes, though. I was grateful for that. At 25, the age when I thought I'd gained control, I brought it up again. We were celebrating my birthday at an upscale restaurant I could never afford on my own. So, about the trust, I began, trying to sound casual. I think I'm ready to. Oh, Ellie, Lydia laughed, reaching across to pat my hand. Her diamond engagement ring caught the light. She and Richard had set a date for spring. You're drowning in student loans and living paycheck to paycheck. Do you really think now is the time? But the agreement said. The agreement gives me discretion, she said, her tone cooling slightly. And my professional opinion is that you're not ready. Trust me, I'm doing what's best for you. And I did trust her. She was my sister, my only family. Why would she lie? By 27, I'd moved from the newspaper to a marketing position at a small nonprofit. I worked weekend shifts at a coffee shop to supplement my income. Meanwhile, Lydia and Richard had bought a sprawling house in the suburbs, complete with a pool and home theater. I never saw the document I signed again. I never asked for a copy. Sometimes, in the quiet of my apartment, where I could hear my neighbors arguing through the thin walls, I'd close my eyes and try to remember exactly what the paper had said. But all I could recall was the rain, the smell of furniture polish in the lawyer's office, and the weight of grief crushing my chest. That signature, scrawled in a moment of vulnerability and trust, would come back to haunt me in ways I never could have imagined. It was a bright Sunday in September when the first crack appeared in Lydia's carefully constructed facade. I sat at the corner of the elaborate brunch spread in my cousin Megan's backyard, nursing a mimosa I'd been stretching for an hour. Alcohol on my coffee shop budget was a luxury. Family gatherings had become increasingly uncomfortable as the wealth gap between Lydia and me widened into a chasm. I wore the same sundress I'd worn to the last 3 summer events, while Lydia arrived in designer outfits that still had price tags higher than my monthly rent. I watched her hold court at the center table, where she regaled our extended family with stories of her glamorous life. Richard topped off champagne glasses and nodded along, his surgeon's hands gleaming with an expensive watch that caught the sunlight. The view from the deck is absolutely breathtaking, Lydia was saying, scrolling through photos on her phone. Lake Michigan at sunset. You can see for miles. We closed on it last month, but we're waiting to furnish it until after we get back from Bali. I froze mid-sip. Lake House. Bali? This was the first I'd heard of either. Aunt Patricia cooed over the photos. That must have cost a pretty penny. Waterfront property these days. Lydia waved her hand dismissively. We've been saving, and investments have been good to us this year. Her eyes flickered to me for just a fraction of a second, then away. Something cold settled in my stomach. In all our conversations about my trust fund, the one she was supposedly protecting for me, she'd never mentioned specific investments. Just vague reassurances that it was doing fine and growing steadily. I stood up too quickly, nearly knocking over my chair. Lydia, can I talk to you for a minute? Inside, in Megan's kitchen, I leaned against the marble countertop, trying to calm my suddenly racing heart. Lydia followed me in, eyebrows raised. What's up, Elle? Everything okay? She reached for a strawberry from the fruit tray, popping it into her mouth with casual indifference. You bought a lake house? My voice came out smaller than I intended. She shrugged. We've been talking about investment properties for a while. You know Richard's always wanted a vacation home. And Bali? That's your 3rd trip this year, isn't it? After Greece and Aspen. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Are you keeping count of our vacations? That's a little weird, Ellie. I took a deep breath. I'd like to see the trust statements. All of them. From the beginning. The strawberry she'd been reaching for fell from her fingers. For just a moment, something that looked like panic flashed across her face. Then her features smoothed back into practiced confidence. "God, you're so ungrateful," she hissed, lowering her voice so those outside wouldn't hear. "I've been managing your money better than you ever could. Do you have any idea how much work that is? How many hours I've spent making sure you'll have a secure future? If you've been working so hard on my behalf, then showing me the statements shouldn't be a problem." I surprised myself with how steady my voice was. "Now isn't the time or place to discuss this," she said, glancing toward the backyard. "We have guests." "When then? Next week? Next month? Another year?" The frustration I'd been tamping down for years was bubbling to the surface. "I'm 27, Lydia. The agreement said I'd have control at 25. The agreement gave me discretion," she snapped. "And clearly my discretion is still needed if you're going to throw a tantrum at a family brunch." She brushed past me, adding over her shoulder, "We'll talk about this when you're being reasonable." I didn't follow her back outside. Instead, I slipped out the front door and drove home to my apartment, where the air conditioning was broken again and the super wouldn't return my calls. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lydia's defensiveness kept replaying in my mind. For the first time, I allowed myself to entertain a thought I'd been suppressing for years. What if my sister wasn't protecting my money? What if she was stealing it? The next morning, I called in sick to both jobs and drove to the offices of Harrington and Associates. I didn't have an appointment, but I was prepared to wait all day if necessary. The receptionist raised her eyebrows when I asked for Mr. Harrington. He retired last year, but his son is a partner now. "Would you like to speak with James Harrington instead?" 20 minutes later, I sat across from a younger version of the lawyer who had witnessed my signature 8 years ago. James Harrington listened intently as I explained my situation, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Let me pull the file," he said, typing something into his computer. His frown deepened. "That's odd. It shows the trust was dissolved 3 years ago." Dissolved. The word hit me like a physical blow. What does that mean? It means the funds were dispersed. According to our records, the full amount was transferred to an account at First National under the name Lydia Campbell. The room seemed to tilt. But that's not possible. The trust was supposed to be for me. She was only supposed to manage it until I turned 25. James looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Reeves, do you have a copy of the document you signed?" I shook my head. He sighed. "I can tell you that the original document my father drafted was a standard trust agreement with your sister as trustee until you reach 25. But..." He scrolled through something on his screen. "It appears that's not what was filed. The document on record gives your sister full power of attorney over your financial affairs, with unconditional access to the trust." "That's not what I signed," I whispered, though even as I said it, I realized I couldn't be sure. I hadn't read it carefully. I had trusted Lydia. "There's more," James said gently. "According to these notes, the trust wasn't even meant to be jointly managed. It was yours solely. Your parents were explicit about that in their will." I couldn't breathe. The magnitude of the betrayal was too enormous to process. Is there anything left?" I finally managed to ask. James checked again. "I'm sorry. The account shows a zero balance as of May 15th, 3 years ago." The date hit me like a second blow. May 15th, 2 months before Lydia and Richard had purchased their dream home, the one with the custom kitchen where she now hosted elaborate dinner parties I was rarely invited to. My sister hadn't just betrayed my trust. She had stolen my future. I sat in my car outside Harrington and Associates for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The rational part of my brain told me to drive straight to Lydia's house, to scream and demand answers, to call her every vile name I could think of. The emotional part wanted to collapse, to break down completely. I did neither. Instead, I drove to the small public library 3 blocks from my apartment. With shaking hands, I searched for resources on financial fraud and familial theft. I printed articles about civil litigation, statute of limitations, and burden of proof. The librarian gave me concerned glances as I gathered my stack of papers. Research project? She asked kindly. Something like that, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. That evening, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Claire Watson, a financial advisor whose business card I'd held onto after meeting her at a networking event months ago. The second was to Michael Torres, an attorney specializing in financial fraud. I don't have much money, I told Torres bluntly during our phone consultation. I can pay a retainer in installments, but recovering what was stolen might take time. Let's start with a free consultation, he offered. After that, we can discuss payment options. I didn't call in sick the next day. I didn't tell anyone what I discovered. Not my coworkers, not my friends, and certainly not Lydia, who texted as if nothing had happened. Sorry about yesterday. You know how family gatherings make everyone tense. Dinner next week? I replied, can't. Work deadline. Maybe next month. She didn't press. She never did when I mentioned work. Her interest in my career had always been superficial at best. After my shift at the coffee shop that weekend, I sat down with Claire Watson at a table in the corner. I brought her copies of every financial document I could find, my meager bank statements, tax returns, even the handful of emails from Lydia over the years mentioning the trust. It's not much to go on, Claire admitted, reviewing my papers. But it's a start. You'll need to get copies of the original trust documents and your parents' will. James Harrington is sending those over, I said. But what about proof that she took the money? How do I prove that? Claire's expression was sympathetic but resolute. That's where the lawyer comes in. If she used the money for traceable purchases, like that lake house or her primary residence, we might be able to make a case. Monday morning, I met with Michael Torres, who listened intently as I explained everything. Family financial fraud is unfortunately common, he said when I finished. But it's also difficult to prosecute, especially after so much time has passed. So she gets away with it? The unfairness made my throat tight. I didn't say that, Torres replied, straightening a pen on his desk. I said it's difficult, not impossible. We'll need to build a case carefully, gathering evidence that connects the dissolution of your trust to her major purchases. Bank records, property deeds, loan applications. How long will that take? Months, possibly. And it will get ugly. Are you prepared for that? Family cases always do. Was I prepared to burn the last bridge to my only family? The thought made me sick. But the alternative, letting Lydia keep what she had stolen, allowing her to continue thinking she had won, was worse. I'm prepared, I said firmly. The weeks that followed took on a strange rhythm. By day, I worked my marketing job at the nonprofit, throwing myself into projects with renewed focus. By night, I sifted through documents, searching for patterns and proofs, occasionally picking up extra shifts at the coffee shop to cover the legal fees that were slowly mounting despite Torres's generosity. I kept my distance from Lydia, making excuses for missed dinners and family gatherings. If she noticed my withdrawal, she didn't mention it. Perhaps she was too busy enjoying her stolen wealth. Then came the opportunity one hadn't dared hope for. Our nonprofit, which focused on community development in underserved neighborhoods, was launching an expansion campaign. They needed someone to lead public relations and fundraising efforts. You've shown real initiative these past few months, my boss said when she offered me the role. The board noticed. The position comes with more responsibility, but also a significant raise. I accepted immediately, pouring every ounce of my energy and talent into the campaign. I worked 14-hour days, networked tirelessly, crafted messaging that resonated with donors and community members alike. I channeled all my anger, all my hurt, into creating something positive. 3 months of relentless work later, we'd not only met our fundraising goal, but exceeded it by 40%. At the celebration event, the executive director called me to the stage. Thanks to Eleanor Reeves's exceptional leadership, we're able to expand our services to 3 additional neighborhoods next year, she announced to applause. To show our appreciation, the board has approved a special performance bonus. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000, more money than I'd ever had at one time in my life. You've earned every penny, she whispered as she hugged me. That night, Alone in my apartment, I stared at the check in disbelief. For years, I'd lived with the knowledge that my financial security had been stolen. I'd worked 2 jobs, pinched pennies, and still barely made ends meet. Now, suddenly, I had funds that were unquestionably legally mine. Money that Lydia couldn't touch. I called Torres the next morning. "I can pay your retainer in full now," I told him. "And I want to move forward with a civil suit." "Are you certain?" he asked. "Once we file, there's no going back. Your sister will know you're coming after her." I thought of Lydia's smug smile at the brunch, her casual dismissal of my concerns, her years of lies. I thought of my parents, who had worked so hard to provide for my future, only to have their wishes betrayed by their eldest daughter. "I'm certain," I said, "but I won't confront her yet. Let her think she's still winning. Let her think I'm still the naive little sister who doesn't know any better." For now, silence would be my strategy. Silence and careful preparation for the battle to come. December arrived with its usual flurry of twinkling lights and holiday music. I'd always loved Christmas. The smell of pine, the warmth of family traditions, the childhood memories of waking up to stockings filled with small treasures. But since our parents died, the holidays had become a performance, with Lydia as the director, orchestrating picture-perfect celebrations that felt hollow at their core. My phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Despite my better judgment, I opened it. Lydia had posted a series of photos, her immaculate living room transformed into a holiday wonderland, complete with a 12-foot tree adorned with color-coordinated ornaments, Richard and her wearing matching monogrammed pajamas, a gingerbread house competition with our cousins, perfectly wrapped presents with calligraphy name tags. The caption read, "Getting ready for our annual Campbell family Christmas. Traditions matter. #blessed, #family first." I scrolled through the comments, all variations of "gorgeous" and "you're such a wonderful hostess" and "can't wait." It seemed everyone had been discussing the upcoming celebration. Everyone except me. I checked my text messages and emails. Nothing about Christmas plans. No invitation. No mention of the usual family gathering that happened every year at their house since they'd taken over hosting duties from our parents. Maybe she just forgot to include me in the group message, I thought, though I didn't believe it. Lydia never forgot details. My phone buzzed again. A text from Lydia. "Just a heads up, we're keeping Christmas small this year. Don't worry about coming." I stared at those words. Not, "We wish we could include you." Not, "Sorry, but space is limited." Just, "Don't worry about coming." After all that had happened, after discovering what she'd done, it shouldn't have hurt. But it did. A sharp pain that took my breath away. Christmas had been our parents' favorite holiday. Their traditions, their recipes, their ornaments now lived in Lydia's home. And she was casually cutting me out, as if I were an acquaintance rather than her only sister. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Why not? Too confrontational. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Too passive. After everything, you still can't be decent? Too revealing of what I knew. In the end, I simply wrote, "Got it." When my phone rang 20 minutes later, I expected it was Lydia, perhaps feeling a twinge of guilt. Instead, it was our cousin Megan. "Hey, just checking if you're coming to Lydia's for Christmas? I'm trying to coordinate ride-sharing with Aunt Patricia." I hesitated. "I'm not invited, actually."
"What?"
"That can't be right." Megan sounded genuinely confused. "It's your family home." "Technically, it's Lydia and Richard's home now." I corrected her, keeping my tone light. "And she just texted that they're keeping it small this year. But they invited the entire extended family. There's going to be like 20 people there." A knot formed in my stomach. "Oh, hold on. Let me ask her about this." Before I could stop her, Megan put me on hold. When she returned a few minutes later, her voice had changed. So I talked to Lydia. And she said, "God, this is awkward." She said you've been emotional lately, and she doesn't want any drama at Christmas. Megan paused. "Ellie, what's going on between you two?" I almost told her everything. The trust fund, the theft, the years of lies. But Torres had advised discretion until we filed the lawsuit, warning that tipping off Lydia could give her time to hide assets or construct defenses. "It's complicated," I said instead. "But don't worry about it. I'll make other plans for Christmas." "You could come to my place," Megan offered. "We're doing a small thing on Christmas Eve before heading to Lydia's the next day." "Thanks, but I think I need some quiet time this year." I forced a laugh. It's been crazy at work. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, looking at my pathetic excuse for a Christmas tree, a 2-foot artificial one I'd picked up at the drugstore, decorated with a strand of battery-operated lights and a few ornaments I'd managed to claim before Lydia took everything from our parents' house. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt a crack in my carefully maintained composure. Not just sadness or anger, but a wild, unexpected urge to laugh at the absurdity of it all. My sister had stolen nearly $1 million from me, was living in luxury purchased with my money, and now had the audacity to exclude me from Christmas because I might cause drama. And so I did laugh, alone in my apartment, until the laughter turned to something else entirely, something that felt cleansing in its intensity. When it passed, I wiped my eyes and made a decision. I wouldn't let Lydia take Christmas from me, too. I'd already lost so much: my parents, my inheritance, years of financial security. But she couldn't steal my dignity or my resilience unless I let her. I opened my laptop and forwarded the bonus check deposit confirmation to Torres, along with the message, moving forward with everything we discussed. "I'm ready." Then I called my friend Sarah, who'd been inviting me to her family's Christmas celebration for years. "Is that offer to join your family for Christmas still open?" I asked when she answered. "Always," she replied warmly. "Mom asks about you every year. She still talks about how you helped her set up her blog when no one else had the patience." "There's something I need to drop off at my aunt's house first," I said, an idea forming. "But I'll be there by dinner." I had a present for my aunt, a hand-knitted scarf I'd made during evenings alone in my apartment. But more importantly, I had something to say to my sister. Not everything, not yet, but enough to let her know that the power dynamic between us was about to change. I marked the date on my calendar, December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. The day I would begin to reclaim what was mine. December 23rd dawned clear and cold, the kind of crisp winter day that would have delighted our mother. I spent the morning wrapping my aunt's gift with precision, using the techniques Mom had taught us both: crisp corners, tight seams, ribbon curled with scissors. Lydia had always been impatient with wrapping her packages haphazard until she started paying someone else to do it for her. Funny how money could paper over so many flaws. I dressed with care, choosing a dark green sweater that brought out the gold flecks in my eyes, Mom's eyes, as everyone used to say. I applied makeup with a steady hand and styled my hair. Not for Lydia's approval, but because I wanted to walk into her house as the best version of myself, confident and composed. The drive to the suburbs took 40 minutes. Every Christmas carol on the radio stirred memories. Dad singing off-key, Mom's special eggnog, the 4 of us decorating the tree together. Back when we were a real family, before death and greed tore us apart. I pulled up to the house, my childhood home transformed by Lydia's expensive renovations. The classic colonial now boasted a 3-car garage, expanded second story, and professionally decorated exterior with perfectly symmetrical wreaths on each window. A team of landscapers was adding final touches to the holiday light display. For a moment, I hesitated. I could leave the gift on the porch, avoid the confrontation entirely. Torres had suggested minimal contact until the lawsuit was filed in January. But something inside me, perhaps my father's stubbornness or my mother's sense of justice, propelled me from the car toward the front door. I rang the bell, present tucked under my arm, heart hammering despite my determination to stay calm. I expected the housekeeper to answer, but the door swung open to reveal Lydia herself, flour dusting her designer apron, surprise flashing across her face before she composed it into a polite mask. "Ellie," she said, not opening the door fully. "This is unexpected." I held up the wrapped package. "I brought Aunt Martha's gift. I know she'll be here for Christmas, and I wanted to make sure she got it." Lydia hesitated, then stepped back reluctantly. "Come in, I guess. But I'm in the middle of cookie prep for tomorrow." The entryway was a showcase of holiday perfection, garlands draped along the staircase, the scent of cinnamon and pine heavy in the air, soft classical Christmas music playing from hidden speakers. I swallowed hard, remembering how this same space once held our family's mismatched decorations, each with its own story and meaning. I followed her to the kitchen, where every surface gleamed with either marble or stainless steel. A parade of perfectly uniformed gingerbread men lined a cooling rack. Of course they were perfect. Anything less would ruin the aesthetic. "You can leave the gift under the tree," Lydia said, returning to her rolling pin. "Though honestly, you could have mailed it. I wanted to deliver it personally." I placed the package carefully under the massive tree, which was decorated in a rigid silver and blue theme that would have made our color-loving mother shake her head. When I returned to the kitchen, Lydia was watching me with narrowed eyes. "Is there something else, Ellie?" "I'm really quite busy." "Actually, yes." I leaned against the doorframe. "I wanted to ask why I'm the only family member not invited to Christmas this year." Her hands stilled on the dough. "I told you, we're keeping it small." 20 people isn't small, Lydia. Megan told me everyone else is coming." A flush crept up her neck, but her voice remained cool.
"Fine."
"You want the truth? Things have been strange between us lately. You've been distant, canceling plans, barely responding to texts. And frankly, I don't need the tension tomorrow. A Christmas is stressful enough without walking on eggshells around you." "Walking on eggshells?" I repeated incredulously. "When have you ever worried about my feelings?" Her jaw tightened. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. This attitude." She gestured toward me with the rolling pin. "You've always had this victim mentality, Ellie. Poor little sister, everyone against you. It's exhausting." For a moment, I was that 19-year-old again, vulnerable and uncertain. But I wasn't that girl anymore. "You know what's exhausting, Lydia? Pretending. Pretending you care about me while stealing from me. Pretending to be the perfect big sister while lying to my face for years." Her expression shifted from irritation to something harder, colder. She set down the rolling pin and wiped her hands methodically on her apron. "You're not invited to Christmas," she said softly, a smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. "But I'm sure you'll survive." That smirk, so confident, so condescending. She truly believed she was untouchable, that I would continue to be the compliant little sister who never fought back. I smiled, matching her calm tone with my own. "Fine," I replied. "But don't expect a penny for my $50,000 bonus." Her face changed in an instant, the smirk faltering. "What bonus?" "The one I got for leading our nonprofit's expansion campaign. It's quite an achievement, actually. Not that you'd know, since you've never bothered to ask about my work." She blinked rapidly, mental calculations clearly racing behind her eyes. $50,000? "Every penny rightfully mine," I said, emphasizing each word. "Unlike the trust fund you emptied." All color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're." "Save it, Lydia. I know everything. The document you had me sign wasn't what Mr. Harrington prepared. I know you dissolved the trust 3 years ago. I know you took almost $1 million that was meant for me." Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. Bank records. Property purchases. Timelines that match perfectly with large withdrawals from my trust. My lawyer has been quite thorough." "Your lawyer?" Her voice rose an octave. "We're filing after the holidays." I straightened, adjusting my purse on my shoulder. "But hey, good luck paying off that lake house mortgage. I hear waterfront property taxes are brutal." I turned to leave, but her voice, suddenly brittle with panic, stopped me. "Ellie, wait.
"We can talk about this."
There's been a misunderstanding." I faced her one last time. 8 years of misunderstandings? I don't think so. "We're family," she whispered, playing her final card. "Yes," I agreed. "That's what makes your betrayal unforgivable." I walked out the door, leaving her standing in her perfect kitchen, surrounded by her perfect decorations, the foundation of her perfect life beginning to crack beneath her feet. For the first time in 8 years, I felt truly free. Christmas morning dawned with gentle snowfall, the kind that transforms the world into something quiet and new. I woke early, a habit from childhood that even adulthood couldn't break. For the first time in years, I felt no dread about the day ahead, no anxiety about performing the role of grateful little sister amid Lydia's orchestrated perfection. I padded to my apartment window in thick socks, wrapping myself in the handmade quilt that had belonged to my grandmother. Outside, the city was still sleeping, the streets empty except for the occasional early dog walker or shift worker trudging through fresh snow. My phone had been silenced since I'd left Lydia's house. Before turning it off, I'd seen the barrage beginning. First texts, then calls, then voicemails, each more desperate than the last. Lydia cycling through her arsenal of manipulation, anger, guilt, reason, pleading. I'd listened to only one message, her voice tight with panic. "Ellie, let's talk about this like adults. I can explain everything. Call me back. Please." There was nothing to explain. The facts were clear, the betrayal undeniable. Some broken things couldn't be mended, some trust could never be restored. I made myself a proper Christmas breakfast, French toast with cinnamon and real maple syrup, crispy bacon, fresh berries in a bowl. I set my small table with the mismatched china I'd collected from thrift stores, pieces chosen for their character rather than their coordination. Mom would have approved. She'd always said it was the imperfections that made things interesting. The coffee was just finishing when my phone chimed with a calendar reminder, Sarah's family dinner at 2 o'clock. I had hours yet to enjoy my solitude, this peaceful Christmas morning that belonged entirely to me. I settled on my couch with my breakfast, and a novel I'd been wanting to read for months. No forced conversation, no watching every word to avoid triggering Lydia's disapproval, no pretending to be grateful for calculated gifts selected to remind me of my lesser status. Just quiet, warmth, and the gentle fall of snow outside. Midway through my second cup of coffee, I decided to check my email. Among the standard holiday promotions was a message from Michael Torres, timestamped 7:13 a.m. The subject line read simply, "Merry Christmas and update. Eleanor. First, I hope you're enjoying a peaceful holiday. Second, I thought you should know that I received a call from Richard Campbell late last night. He was quite agitated and mentioned something about wanting to clear up a misunderstanding before things got out of hand. I informed him that all communication should go through proper legal channels going forward. Also, I did some additional digging yesterday and discovered something interesting. Lydia and Richard refinanced their primary residence 3 months ago, presumably to cover shortfalls from their lake house purchase. They're significantly over-leveraged. This could work in our favor during settlement negotiations. We can discuss this when we meet next week, but I wanted you to know that your sister appears to be taking your claims seriously. Best regards, Michael Torres." I read the email twice, a strange mix of emotions washing over me. Not satisfaction exactly, but perhaps vindication. Lydia and Richard's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, just as she had dismantled the future our parents had planned for me. I closed my laptop without replying. Torres's news could wait until after Christmas. Today wasn't about lawsuits or revenge or even justice. Today was about reclaiming something I'd lost, the simple joy of a holiday celebrated on my own terms. At noon, I bundled up and walked to the small park near my apartment. Children were already out with new sleds, their laughter carrying in the crisp air. I found a bench and sat watching them, remembering how Dad used to take Lydia and me sledding every Christmas afternoon while Mom prepared dinner. A little girl in a bright red coat tumbled off her sled, then picked herself up, giggling. Her father rushed over, brushing snow from her hair as she declared, "Again. I want to go again." Her resilience made me smile. She already understood what had taken me years to learn. Falling down wasn't the end of the world, as long as you got back up. By the time I arrived at Sarah's family home, carrying a batch of my mother's special cranberry cookies made from a recipe I'd memorized years ago, I felt centered in a way I hadn't experienced since before my parents died. Sarah's mother enveloped me in a warm hug at the door. "Eleanor, we're so happy you finally joined us." Their home was chaotic in the best way, mismatched ornaments on the tree, Dishes that didn't coordinate, 3 generations talking over each other, children racing through rooms clutching new toys. No staged photos for social media, no color-coordinated decor, just genuine warmth and inclusion. During dinner, surrounded by Sarah's boisterous family, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Lydia again, no doubt. I ignored it, focusing instead on the animated story Sarah's grandfather was telling about his first job. Later, as we gathered in the living room for games, Sarah nudged me. "You okay? You seem different today." "I am different," I replied, realizing it was true. I finally stopped letting someone else define my worth. After dinner and games and more dessert than anyone should reasonably consume, I drove home through streets now quiet again, Christmas Day fading into evening. In my apartment, I plugged in my small tree, its multicolored lights reflecting in the window against the night sky. I opened my laptop and composed a brief email to Torres. "Michael, thank you for the update. Please proceed with the civil suit as planned. I'm ready for whatever comes next. The trust may be gone, but so is the power Lydia had over me. Merry Christmas, Eleanor." As I pressed send, I felt no regret, no second thoughts. Just clarity and the quiet certainty that I was, at last, standing up for myself. And not just standing up, standing taller than ever. This Christmas hadn't been about perfect decorations or elaborate meals or expensive gifts. It had been about something far more valuable, finding my voice, my boundaries, my strength. My kind of Christmas, after all, wasn't about who I celebrated with, but who I was becoming. And that person was someone my parents would have been proud of. Someone I was proud of. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering yesterday's footprints, making everything new again.